You guys, hi, welcome back. Um, yeah, I've been thinking on a lot of topics that keep coming up, especially during Pride Month. The stuff that kind of comes to mind. A lot of it's kind of cultural based, um, American cultural based. So, yeah, here, we talk about a lot of topics for, gender related issues, things that are maybe common in society, maybe not so common in society. Um, a lot of it's from an American Western perspective, um, mainstream American Western perspective. So, because that's mostly what we're all living within, at least in this U.S. country. We all live within it, even if we don't identify with such groups. It's still mostly what surrounds us and what drives a lot of the culture around us and what's available to us. So, on that topic, on that note, I kind of wanted to start talking more about like sexuality related topics, not maybe I'm trying to put into words what I'm gonna want to talk about today, but not like a purely sex ed topic, but just kind of some things that I've noticed related to either sex ed or related to even things that come to maybe the mainstream culture of just sexuality in general, and in the media, sexuality, as well as, I guess you would say, like adult related things like pornography and different sorts of topics like that. Like I'm quite an open-minded person. A lot of people who may not know me or may know me and may not know that about me, that I'm pretty open-minded. I'm pretty much like, hey, if you're not hurting anybody, you do what you want to do. I always advocate for people to focus on their health, focus on the health of others around them. To me, those are really important things to see in a community, is, for people considering, not exploiting different groups of people, not trying to, use people or manipulate people just to get what they want, or be abusive towards people, or, using maybe like their age or their status or their power to, dominate other people without their permission, like to do that, in a way that is detrimental to another group or another person. I'm not for, abuse and manipulation and all this kind of, that kind of thing. But so long as it's legal and consensual, and respectful to your own self as well as to the people around you, I really don't have any problems with what anybody decides they want to do. I'm pretty open-minded to learning about things and knowing about things, even if it's maybe not all. I wouldn't say everything's my cup of tea. I mean, there are things that kind of like gross me out, and then there are things that I'm like, oh, that's kind of an interesting thing that, I find myself maybe attracted to, that isn't maybe like a norm in society. So I do notice those different parts that come up. I'm not like completely oblivious to that kind of stuff. But yeah, all that being said, so I'd say the main thing that I notice when it comes to sex ed in general, being taught about sex, sexuality, as far as, who does what with whom, what you may like, what you may dislike, what your part of the culture, even if that's religion or your ethnicity or, different cultural subcultures of different groups, what is considered normal or appropriate for those groups of people versus what's considered normal and appropriate mainstream versus what's considered, kind of more taboo, or considered not appropriate at all. I mean, a lot of these things, they vary completely, culture to culture, group to group, gender to gender, between genders, between all different types of people. But we all know that, at least those of you who were raised when I was raised, like, sex ed was at the most, at the best, you would get taught, that, sex is between a man and a male and a female, and that you have virginity, and when you've had sex by penetrative sex of a male putting a penis in a vagina, then that's when one loses their virginity. And already a lot of us just don't fall into any of those clear-cut boxes, right? I mean, there are a lot of us who may have different identities with their gender. So it's like, okay, if you have a different gender identity, then how does that fit with, virginity or the concept of losing virginity and things like that? Or do you even believe that there's such a thing as losing virginity? I mean, there's a topic that comes up often that, a lot of people who are, part of queer culture, gender queer, sexuality queer, people saying, I don't believe in virginity because of the way it's defined, because of the way it's been defined for most of us growing up. A lot of us don't really fit that, right? Because if you're saying, okay, it's a male and a female, well, if you don't identify as a male or a female, or if you do, but your genitalia doesn't really, those sex characteristics aren't aligned with what society agrees that, okay, you're a male or a female based on your genitalia, which is a whole different thing of its own. I mean, those are two different things. Your gender is different than your genitalia. They don't always have to be like, if you're a male, you have a penis. Like, that's not always how it is. And so with that, and then, with, the different genitalia involved, you don't always have those same categories that are so clear cut. And so then when it comes to the topic of, okay, did a person lose their virginity or not? Or is this considered sex or not considered sex? Then the conversation changes, because it's like, well, now you have to redefine sex if it's penis in vagina of a male's penis in a female's vagina. But if you're not a male, or you're not a female, or if you don't have a penis, or if you don't have a vagina, or if you don't call them that, or if you don't consider them that, or feel like that's what it is, or, it's just, there's so many other things that start coming up that you're just like, wait, hold on a second, because technically people can say, oh, well, then you're a virgin. But then it's like, well, you can clearly be sexually active. You can even get STDs and STIs and be completely sexually active, or even get impregnated and not be considered to have lost your virginity. So it's kind of like, that doesn't make sense, right? I mean, it's kind of like, how does that work, right? So I'd say, people have the right to define things the way that, kind of works for them. I'd say a definition that I have always liked when it comes to, like, somebody saying, sex or not sex, I'd say that and this is just my own kind of opinion from what I've kind of come across in life, and people can think differently. I don't really mind how people think about different things, that's fine. But just for me, it kind of makes sense in my own mind, just to say, if there's an action, behavior, some sort of interaction between a person and at least one other person, then, if that could potentially lead to sexual arousal or an orgasm, or not even, because some people don't even orgasm, so you can't even really have to throw that in there. Or some people don't want to, or just don't. So, I wouldn't say that, if a person's never reached an orgasm, then they've never been, they've never lost their virginity. It's just this whole thing. It's just like, we're all taught, a lot of us are taught in these ways that just kind of don't really make too much sense when you start, peeling away the different layers of these categories and how they kind of just keep us, stuck in these different ways of thinking, which, yeah, if you fit in the categories, you're not going to have to think twice about it. It's like, yeah, if I'm a woman and a guy comes with his penis in my vagina and we both have an orgasm from that experience, then, most people wouldn't argue that would be considered sex. And if that was the first time for both of the people, most people wouldn't argue that would have been considered both people's first time having sex, losing their virginity. Most people wouldn't argue that. They wouldn't say, oh, no, that's not right. But, if you take two women, for example, and you take a woman, two females having sex, and maybe if it's just mostly manually or orally or combination of the two, or whatever combination, there are plenty of combinations of things, but I mean, say if it was manually, orally, that's how they were doing it, some people would argue, oh, that's not sex. Or some people would say, yeah, that's sex. But then if it's a guy, a man and a woman doing those things orally or, manually, then it's like, well, if the guy has a penis, why isn't he using that? So, I'm just speaking to what society generally says, right? This is stuff that a lot of us have heard, that is just like, wait a second. So, like, when you start thinking about it more and more, it's like, yeah, it does make sense to some extent, kind of what we've been traditionally taught. But oftentimes we're taught about sex from a perspective of there has to be a penis involved. Like, you would rarely hear a gay male couple, somebody saying that, if they're having anal sex, one penis going into someone else's anus, you would never really say, oh, that wasn't sex. You wouldn't really say that too much. I mean, some people do. They don't consider anal sex either, or oral, or manually, or anything but just penis and vagina. They don't consider anything else to be sex. And that's them, I think it's okay for people to have their own definitions of things the way that they kind of see it. Even gay couples, lesbian couples, whatever combination of couples you have, not everyone's gonna, fall within the same method of thinking. And that's okay. I mean, that's totally fine. But, I'm just here to kind of talk about, kind of what it looks like when it's like, okay, not all of us really fit into these little neat, tight fit boxes. So then where do we go from there, right? Because a lot of times what we have is, with all these dynamics, what we often have are people defining things for us. So we have different groups who have decided that, the way you have sex is less than the way these other groups do it, or it's not as valid, or it doesn't count as much. Like, there's a hierarchy to this counts more, and that is just like, there's a certain level that it gets to where people will consider, oh, this is more like foreplay, it's not actually sex, but it's like, yeah, you can kind of call it that, but it's kind of not really what it is. And so a lot of times, textbooks, videos, movies, I don't know, however people are being taught about these things, at least when I was younger, these conversations never came up. It was like gay people never even existed almost. It was seen as like less than 1% of the population is gay. And I mean, what does that even mean? You know, it's like, because there's a difference between, you know, like I was given an example real quick for myself of something that I actually said out loud. I don't know how many years ago this was, like within the last 6-7 years, I'd say. I was out to eat with some friends. We're out at a gay bar having some brunch, just brunching it up. And me and my regular homies, which were mostly dudes, they weren't all gay dudes, but we really liked this bar because it was inclusive, it was friendly, it had really strong, good drinks. And for the price, I mean, you could basically sit there from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, Saturday and Sunday, paying no more than $30 or $30 with tax and tip. So add tax and tip to that. About $30 for all you can eat, all you can drink for 4 hours on a weekend in the daytime. So we do some day drinking and we'd go out and it would be 10 to 2. Even if an hour's worth, it was definitely worth it because they would come and refill your drinks. You could get mimosas or sangria refilled for free. Or you can just get, like, for half of that price, you could just get all you can drink. And then you could just order something off the menu. Or you could get all you could eat for half the price because it was a buffet. So you could get all you could eat and then, you know, not purchase a drink or purchase like a different type of a beverage. So you could either get half price by doing either eating or only drinking, and then you could pay full price for all you can eat, all you can drink. So I was like, dude, that's a good price. Like 4 hours worth of eating and drinking, you know, with your buddies, and you can do that 2 times on a weekend. Of course we're going to show up. And so we would go and just do that, just eat, drink, like till we just couldn't anymore. And it was cool. They'd let you chill. Like, it was a buffet, so you could just chill there. They weren't trying to kick you out. They knew everyone was brunching. And then so we go. That was the environment that we were in. It was kind of party, you know. They'd be playing like Britney Spears in the background, and like Real McCoy, and like some 90s pop, like NSYNC kind of stuff, some early 2000s stuff. So it was kind of fun music, pop hits from like 90s and 2000s, and it was really a chill environment. Like, it was really nice. You could sit outside in the patio in the shade and just chill with your buddies and just like meet people or whatever. And that was the vibe. Not every weekend, but very often we would do that. And so, you know, one day I'm hanging out with, you know, there's this other female who joins us, and she's a female, cis female, straight lady. I mean, I've spoken about her before. Like, she kind of seems open to people being gay, and then also was very on the religious side of like saying, oh, I think it's wrong. But also, she only really brought that up maybe once or twice, and also she didn't really mind. She'd go to gay bars and stuff all the time and go out for drinks and do all this other kind of stuff. She totally didn't care. And so she asked, you know, am I the only straight one here? Like, I don't know how she said it, but she was kind of like, oh, I'm really glad to like hang out with you guys, but am I the only straight one here? And like, I was just thinking, like, you're like, I'm the minority in that group of people, but she wasn't the only straight one. Like, a lot of the guys were straight. But she just had assumed that, okay, we're all hanging out at a gay bar, so they must be gay. And then I made a comment. I said something along the lines of, oh, I'm not gay. I just like to have sex with women. That's kind of what I said. Like, just kind of like that. And I don't know, I was kind of like drinking and tipsy and like joking and not joking at the same time. I was kind of like, because I mean, I don't I'll just put it this way. I don't really like identify myself as gay, like in those words. Like if somebody were to ask me, are you gay versus are you straight? I would definitely not veer towards straight. Like, I don't think I'm anywhere near that category. But as far as gay, I don't really identify myself as gay, like as that term. But it's also easier than saying straight. I mean, like, if I say straight, I'm not straight. And if I say gay, it's like that kind of implies that, you know, there's never any type of a male involved in my life, romantically or physically or sexually or anything, which also wouldn't be true. And so, you know, I kind of made that comment kind of for fun, because the guys I was with kind of knew what was up. So, like, they knew, and I was kind of just, like, saying it just to say that. But at the same time, I was kind of like, shoot, that, like, just me saying that just made it so it's like, now we have to have this whole conversation. Because it's like, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because, I mean, I've mentioned this before, too, that it's like, it's different. The people, sorry, they're, like, drilling or something. I don't know what's going on over there. Give me a second. Sorry about that. They're like drilling outside somewhere. It's getting really obnoxious. But yeah, the people, so it's possible to fantasize about people that maybe you'd never want to touch, or you'd never want them to touch you, right? That's one kind of thing to consider. It's possible to touch people or want them touching you, but maybe you never fantasize about them, or maybe you don't want like a romantic relationship with them. It's possible to want like the romance with somebody and kind of that like emotional intimacy with somebody without the physical intimacy, or without even finding them like sexually attractive in any way. And it's possible to not act on anything that you want to act on. Like, your actions and the way you feel physically, as well as the way you feel emotionally, those things don't always line up 110% right on point. And so I think a lot of times it can be a little complex when you're asking somebody, or when somebody asks you, like, are you gay? And it's like, if I'm like, just thinking of that comment that I made at that, you know, at that table, I was just like, well, I'm not gay, but I do a lot of gay stuff. Like, it's kind of like, okay, like, yeah, I do, like, action wise, yeah, I do a lot of gay stuff, but I don't call myself gay. I mean, you know, I don't call myself straight at all, but I mean, I think I may have said I was straight at that time, though. I think I said I'm straight, I just like to do a lot of gay stuff. I think I said it like that. I don't know what I said. This was like years ago, but I just remember that I was just kind of like, in my mind, the way I was saying that was kind of like, just kind of in my mind, I was thinking like, there's so many different aspects to me that just for someone to come in and say, are you gay, is like, that's just watering it down for me. You know, it's like, I can say I'm gay so that you can kind of get an idea that I'm not straight, but me saying I'm gay doesn't really give you more details or insight into my dating life or my interests sexually or anything. Like, if I say I'm gay, that almost implies, okay, you're a female and you're gay, so you like other women. It doesn't involve trans people or non-binary people or anything about the way I think or anything about fantasy related things. It has like no explanation of any of that stuff. And so I think it's kind of like, I think most people who know me definitely do know that I'm not straight. But then a lot of people who aren't really close friends with me don't really know like the details of like my dating life or who I'm attracted to and whatnot, until I explain it to them. And I don't explain it to everybody because I don't think it's everybody's business, but I kind of know what I'm attracted to. I mean, I tend to be quite attracted to androgyny regardless of how somebody identifies their own gender. that is probably the ultimate attractiveness to me, like physically, of how people would look. And I'd say like kind of pretty fluid. I mean, I appreciate fluid sexuality, but somebody doesn't have to necessarily be fluid with their sexuality. More so gender fluidity kind of attracts me a little bit more. But yeah, all that being said, I don't really think people really go into that much detail. And there's another experience I had where a person was telling me, well, one of my friends, we were kind of talking about dating, dates, stuff like that. I've mentioned this before, but like I was talking to one of my friends who, I've been talking about for a while, like we were both kind of dating people newly for a while, but hadn't really caught up for quite a few weeks. And then it came into like a few months where we hadn't really seen each other in person, and we made plans, we went out for drinks, and we're just catching up with one another. And then, that was the time when I kind of told my friend that I was just like my friend was like, oh, what's he like? What's this guy like? And I was just like, well, she has kids. I was like, she. And then my friend was kind of like, wait, what? And so my friend was just like, oh, so you're pan. And I was just like, I mean, I don't like identify as pan. I've never like once said out loud to somebody, oh, I'm pan. I've never said that. Or even recently being out for drinks where, I met this, and that friend before the one I was talking about, was a straight female. And then this other friend was a trans guy, and he was like, what kind of people are you into? And I was like, everybody. Like, that's kind of my blanket when I just don't want to talk about it. I'm kind of just like, you're putting me on the spot, and I'll just say everybody. Because it is true. I mean, there is a hierarchy of attractions for me. I don't feel like I think different groups of people are better than other people. It's just, naturally I'm attracted to some specific stuff. And I think everybody naturally has things that they're more attracted to than others. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that might be equally attracted to like absolutely everything. But I'm not equally attracted to everything, everybody. I do have my specifics with attraction, but I would say I find certain people more attractive than others for certain reasons. I find them more attractive. Certain features I find more attractive. There's a lot that, goes for me that goes into, me considering somebody as attractive, or things that make me kind of have a crush on somebody. There's a lot of variety to that, that's not always cut and dry, like, oh, if this person's a female you might be interested. It's like, nah, not really. If this person is non-binary you might be interested. Nah, not really. I mean, it just kind of depends on the person and a lot of different aspects of that person, for me anyways. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other experiences. Like I've definitely had experiences where I've had, cis straight female friends tell me that they're that they think it's easier for women to date other women, or the same friends kind of telling me like, oh, like I talked to my gay guy friends and they said that they never go through all this the stressors that can be related to dating and gender and all those things. But I was like, well, do they date people of different genders? Because if they're gay males only dating other gay males, they're probably not going to have it come up that they're going to really be asking too many people about their gender. But because I date people that identify with all different kinds of genders, that comes up a lot. Because if I'm on an app where it says non-binary, or it says, genderqueer or fluid or something, that isn't too 100% clear just from the term that somebody uses to identify themselves. A lot of times, when I start talking to the person, I might want to have those conversations, or they might want to have those conversations up front. And it doesn't have to be up front. Like the first time you meet somebody, like how do you identify, and like starting to get all like intrusive and asking all kinds of awkward questions about people's like genitalia and stuff like that. Like I think there is a place and time for that if there's a comfort level that develops where it's okay. And sometimes I think it's just my perspective that it's okay to ask somebody about their comfort level, about when to start asking about that or when to ever talk about it, just so that one knows. Like I never want to make somebody feel uncomfortable. I never want to make somebody feel like, oh, like you're jumping the gun asking these things and like I barely met you. And I also don't want to come across as like, oh, I'm colorblind or I'm gender blind and I don't see gender, and I'm not, I don't want to come across as like this oblivious person or be too hesitant to kind of like bring up these different gender related topics that somebody might really want to talk about. And I'm also not very nosy, so it's kind of it can be a hard dynamic to try to navigate when you first meet somebody. But I would say definitely when it comes to, sex ed, to dating, to sexuality, these different topics, we really don't learn a lot about them in a formal educational environment. Oftentimes it's usually like a side kind of educational experience, like you go out of your way to buy a book or listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video or rent a movie or find somebody to talk to, or go to the center in your city or neighborhood, if there's like an LGBTQ plus center, I don't know, like, or try to talk to someone online in some forum or something. I would just warn people, there are creepers out there. So that's just something that I would caution. Anyone who's an adult, if you're 18 or older, shouldn't be approaching people who are not 18 or older. If you're younger than 18, shouldn't be lying about your age. You also shouldn't, you got to be careful with people who may seem like they want to be, adult figures or educational, trustworthy, older figures in a person's life. Just because they're older doesn't mean that they're wiser or that they're gonna help. So just definitely a lot of caution is necessary. I'm not like against people who have fetishes of any kind. I don't think there's anything like wrong with that. I think it's normal that people have fetishes. That's fine. But that's another thing to kind of caution too, is that, sometimes people might fetishize, a person based on their race or their gender identity or different things like that. Maybe they're, it's different to be just naturally attracted to somebody versus like it's a fetish. So those are just things that, mostly were coming to my mind when I was thinking about, sex ed in general. I'm not sure how helpful how helpful all of that was. But on that same topic, I think when it comes to, gender and sexuality and sex ed and different things like that, I'll probably put the pornography topic as its own separate topic, just because I think there's a lot there as well. It's a lot, guys. It's hard to even like have the vocabulary to even like explain things and like talk about them in a way that isn't exclusive, you know. I'm not gonna sit here and say like, oh, like it's too hard for me to mention all the genders, or it's too hard for me to mention every possible dynamic of every different variable combined, every combination possible. I don't think it's too hard. I think it's just complex in general. It's always been complex. I think it's fine that it's complex, but I also think these conversations need to be opening up too, in a time where, you know, we have, you know, a lot of us live in societies where, you know, gay marriage is legal, and we live in societies where you can kind of date or marry who you please legally and not get in trouble for it. But then, you know, the education around it is just not there. There's no education towards, okay, yeah, like, yeah, you can get married, but like, how do you even get to that phase? I mean, most people don't just like suddenly meet and then marry somebody. Like, there's dating, there's getting to know each other, you know. Some people just do things in a certain sequence. So I'd say just kind of keeping that in mind in general, with the natural kind of like the natural unfolding of, you know, social interactions, dating, meeting, kind of how those conversations kind of get brought up. I mean, if you only really have to go by basically what comes to your mind or the way you've been treated, a lot of times it can be challenging, you know, because a lot of us who are not, you know, maybe straight or hetero, you know, cisgender people, a lot of times get approached by people in a very intrusive, inappropriate way, a lot, and, you know, if you know how that feels, you don't really want to be doing that to other people. But then it's like, well, how do we have a mature conversation about this? How do we even educate ourselves? How do we even learn about it? How do we even, you know, start talking about it? How do we even, like, realize kind of where we want to go with, you know, the way we think or the way we feel, or, you know, how do you even really kind of, you know, what do you do when you meet somebody that you like, you know, like, you don't want to screw it up by not knowing how to address somebody, or not really knowing kind of like, oh, this person's being manipulative, or oh, this person's abusive, or oh, this person doesn't care about my rights, or oh, this person's like totally fetishizing me and not even really interested in me as a human, but me as like an idea of something, that they're attracted to the idea of this thing because it turns them on, but it's not like they're attracted to you as a person. Or, you know, like, yeah, like, how to even navigate those things, because I feel like when you're a cis straight person, you know, you're taught how to navigate all that kind of stuff. You're taught, hey, this is what it looks like when you're in a relationship that's not, you know, healthy, with maybe like age boundaries, or, you know, like knowledge or power dynamics, and, you know, this is what it looks like when the relationship is unhealthy. This is what it looks like when, how to talk about, different ways that you're thinking about things, or different emotions that you're experiencing. A lot of us aren't really taught that when it comes to different dynamics with different gender related dynamics coming up. Because, if you have someone who's maybe more masculine presenting, there are plenty of females who are masculine presenting who, I don't want to stereotype people, but sometimes, people, it could go there can be very femme presenting people too, or very masc presenting people too. Like, it doesn't mean that they're not emotional, but, some people, you don't want to emasculinate somebody, or, make them feel like their masculinity is like, being threatened, coming at someone in a way that's kind of like trying to humiliate them, or make them feel like kind of like a way that's like not masculine, or not, strong or powerful, just because of certain things. Or you don't want to make somebody feel like non-feminine if they want to feel feminine, and they want to feel like, that kind of like feminine beauty, prettiness, and things like that. And then you're like treating them like your bro, like your homeboy that you play like basketball with, and like, yo, let's go shoot some hoops kind of thing. And then like, like some people like to be treated a different way. So it's kind of good to kind of know, like, emotionally how they like to be talked to, like in public or privately when you're like alone. Like, is it okay to be kind of like sweet talking somebody or flirty with them? If you're out dancing in a club and stuff, is it okay? Like, who's kind of like, like there's certain dance moves even that it's kind of like, like some people don't. I'll just say myself, for example. Like, I don't really prefer for in a dance setting, I guess I would say, for people to assume I'm kind of like a bottom dancing, if that makes sense. I'm not usually going to be like backing it up on somebody. That's usually not me. But, a lot of times, say if you're with somebody who's maybe more masculine presenting, or like with a trans guy or something, those might be conversations that you might want to have, because they might not want to be all bottoming up dancing on you either. It's kind of like, for some people, they find that a little bit emasculating. They find it kind of like, oh, throw it, catch it kind of thing. Like, people take it differently, and it's just simple stuff like that that can make someone feel comfortable or uncomfortable. Some people like the traditional type of gender, kind of more traditional gender roles, even if, maybe in public, and maybe when you're alone, it doesn't really matter. So it's kind of like, it can get really complex, guys. But just stuff like that, who's initiating things, who pays for the meals. There's different stuff like that where, there's different like roles that come up in society when you're out in public too, when you're just like hanging out and dating, that like, it's not so clear cut. It's not so easy to really know who likes what, who wants what, who prefers you to do this or that. Like, it's really not easy to decipher without a conversation. If nobody ever tells you what they like, or if no one's ever like, really explain to you what they like, and then everybody's different. If you're dating all kinds of different people, every person's going to be different. In my opinion, it's hard to assume. You can assume a lot by actions and what people do, and if you're just like observant of how they are, you can kind of assume things that way too. There is a lot of that with human nature. We do kind of like have to make assumptions. We don't really talk every single detail of our life, explaining what we're doing, why and how and when. And, you know, a lot of times it's like, don't you see me? Aren't you, like, watching what I do? Like, you know, like, pay attention. But then, you know, a lot of things too, you know, need a conversation too. It doesn't have to be these long, in-depth, like, stressful conversations about, you know, all these kind of, like, you know, anxiety provoking things. Like, it doesn't have to be like, you know, you don't want to make your partner or your crush or somebody, like, anxious around you about all this stuff, or make them, like, kind of like, okay, like, why are you asking, like, all these questions all the time? It's like, let's just be us, you know. But I think ultimately, if people know and can understand that you're not trying to be offensive, and if they know and can understand that you're not trying to be, like, you know, manipulative, and they kind of understand that the questions, or maybe that, oh, if I slip up here or there and just get something a little bit wrong, and they were uncomfortable with it, it wasn't an intentional thing. I mean, I remember on a dating profile that I had, I think it said on there fluid, and it doesn't really specify if that's, like, gender or sexuality or what. It just said, you know, fluid. I think I had chosen androgynous and fluid. And I was out on a date with a trans guy, and he was asking me, like, oh, you know, on your profile it says fluid, like, or, you know, was that, like, gender fluid or sexuality, or, like, and I was just kind of like, I was really glad that somebody had actually asked that question. And I was also really glad to have the conversation, but also at the same time had never really had those types of conversations too much. So it was kind of a little challenging to be, like, on the spot. Like, they weren't, like, harassing me or anything, but I felt kind of like, oh, I'm on the spot. I have to kind of answer this question right now. And I was kind of like, well, clothing wise, I dress a certain way that's kind of more fluid. I don't really wear dresses. You know, I tend to wear shorts, t-shirts, but I do like kind of like floral prints and kind of like brighter pinkish colors and things. And, you know, as far as, like, genders I date, I don't remember if I mentioned, like, genders that I'm attracted to or anything. I can't remember. This was, like, a while back. I was pretty nervous, but I just remember that conversation coming up, and I was like, okay, like, and they just asked in a respectful, inquisitive, kind of curious way, you know, and, like, I'm not going to go too much into the whole conversation of us, you know, because, you know, I like to keep things to myself too. I'm not trying to, like, spread my whole life all over the internet. But yeah, like, I remember they were saying, like, yeah, I'm not gonna, you know, I've come to terms that I'm not gonna be, like, a big guy, you know. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine, you know. And, you know, I kind of wished that I would have said more, you know, because I found this person, like, pretty attractive, and I was like, man, I should have just been like, yeah, I really like the way you look, and I like the way you are, and just, like, how you are, even if you are, you know, a little thin and shorter, you know, small stature person. I didn't find it weird or anything. I found them completely, you know, it was nice. We met. It was, like, they were completely appropriate the whole time. There was no weird awkwardness. I mean, I really respect dating, you know, trans guys. Like, they're really, from my own experience, I've had good experiences with them. I feel like they kind of understand definitely the, you know, the female perspective on dating. They understand the stressors behind it. They understand the things that females don't really like about, you know, cisgender males. Some complaints that a lot of people might have that are females, or people who just date cisgender males in general. I feel like trans guys get that. They understand that. And, you know, the trans guys I've dated have never been, like, disrespectful or anything. Like, I've always found them to be just like totally respectful and nice and sweet. And it's always been a good experience. Same with non-binary people I've dated. It's, it's been nice, and same with, same gender people. And I wouldn't say I've had a whole lot of terrible experiences dating cisgender males. I'd say for me, the hardest part of it, honestly, is the gender, kind of expectations that I don't really adhere to, that they oftentimes seem to want to adhere to. That to me is really hard, because, there's a lot of kind of like, hey, I want to build the shelf too. I don't want to just like make your dinner and sweep the floor, like I want to work on the car, like, I'll go buy the car parts and put them in the car, and why don't you go make dinner? It's like things like that are just like, I've never really dated a cisgender male that kind of got it about me, that was kind of just like, oh, you kind of like tools, and you kind of like building stuff, and you kind of like doing this different kind of stuff. There's certain parts of me that are more, interested in the masculine, stereotypical gender-related activities, and then, other times it's like, I just want to cuddle up and talk about our feelings. But it's kind of like, I'd say it gets really complex. So, yes, as usual, very long-winded. I'm not sure if this is a helpful way of presenting this topic, but it's just kind of stuff that I've noticed when it comes to maybe dating, sex ed, just general conversations about sexuality in general, about how to address and how to think about a lot of gender related variables. I don't really see this topic coming up too much. There are definitely a lot of YouTubers out there who, have a lot of demonstrational videos and, clips you can watch and learn from as well. And it's really kind of hard to talk like verbally in words in a way that I'm like, okay, I hope this makes sense. I hope all the things that I was saying today make sense. I hope the message kind of got across clearly. I don't really see anything wrong with, any version of anything that people really want to do. Like I've mentioned at the beginning, as long as it's respectful, to each other's bodies and psyches, and as long as it's, not illegal, I really wouldn't have any issue with anything. But yeah, I'd say it's just pretty challenging. I don't want to call it like a major stressor. It can be, but it's just, it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of extra, conversations, and being extra observant about things, trying not to maybe let nervousness and anxiety get in the way of like paying attention to the details of things, listening to what people say, trying to, absorb that into your own mind, talking to them back as if you kind of understand their perspective on things, or trying to get an understanding without like arguing, but just taking an inquisitive approach, a curious approach, without being intrusive. You don't want to be like intrusive and creepy and weird about stuff. You don't want to be like, completely inappropriate and like gross towards somebody. But if you are interested in them, there are a lot of things you're gonna probably want to know, right? And I don't know why straight cisgender people don't really have these same conversations. I guess maybe it's assumed that the female is going to take the female role of stereotypes and the male is going to take the male stereotypical roles, and they're just going to live life that way. Like, I know plenty of, not just household chore related things, but, like, I know plenty of people who, the guy does the child care, the female brings home the bacon kind of thing. Like, I know plenty of couples that do just whatever's going to work. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But I think, it gets so complex when you have so many different dynamics happening, or if you're interested in so many different gender related kind of categories of people, it gets a little more complex, even if it doesn't have to be like a barrier, or like it doesn't have to get in the way of your life, but it can be a little not too easy to know how to bring these things up. And so, that's what I'm here for, to kind of just provide a lot of food for thought. I don't know everything on the face of the planet, guys. I'm not like some kind of genius on these types of topics. I mostly talk from my own experience and kind of things that I noticed went well and smooth, and some things that I'm like, I wish this would have kind of maybe gone a little more differently. This could be a different way of addressing it. Like how I mentioned when I was out on the date with the trans guy, and he kind of made a comment about, his height and size, and I was kind of like, dude, you're cute. Like, I don't really care, like, what your size is. But, I mean, I didn't really say that, but I kind of feel like I wish I did. It's like I was, like, super into this person. But I think that they assumed that I wouldn't be into them because of that kind of thing. And I remember being pretty offended at one of my friends when I was like, oh yeah, I've been like going out on these dates with this person and we're having a really good time together. And, I was kind of like talking to one of my gay guy friends, cisgender gay guy friends, that made the comment of, oh, like, so you're dating a girl who looks like a little boy. That was his comment. And I was just like, wow. Like, I didn't even know what to say. And that pretty much shut me down from talking to him at all. Until later on, I found out that he's really uncomfortable with, like, transgender people, just not understanding, mostly because he explained that he kind of feels a certain way when he finds somebody attractive, but then maybe their gender isn't what he had expected, or their original, genitalia isn't really what he had expected. He gets a little upset about that, and so he's like, it just turns him off. He's like, I don't like pussy, so why would I want somebody who has one? Like, that to him is like an ultimate factor in dating. And so even if he might find somebody totally attractive physically, if the genitalia isn't what he needs it to be, then he's not interested. And I mean, a lot of people think like that. I'm not gonna say that that's like too rare, right? Somebody's coming. Yeah, that's not like too rare, but it's also not like the most common of ways to I don't know, maybe it is a common way of thinking. I don't really know. Because I don't think that way, so it's hard for me to really wrap my head around why other people don't always find things attractive that I might find attractive. And yeah, to me it's kind of, I find it kind of not odd. It's not that odd or weird, but I just find it pretty I wonder what it would be like to only have an interest in one gender and one sexuality of person. Like, I know I have a lot of cis female friends that are only into like cis straight men, and that is just interesting in itself. Not in a bad way interesting. I'm not like implying that it's wrong. I'm just saying it's just interesting. Because I don't think that way. I don't feel that way. So when I see or hear somebody who's thinking that way, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That people only like one thing. I don't only like just one type of person, so that's different. And a lot of us don't just like one type of person, but also we're not really taught how to navigate our dating lives if we have a different type of liking towards somebody who's not a straight cisgender person or a cisgender gay or lesbian person. If there are other gender dynamics or other sexuality dynamics, a lot of times we don't really get taught how to speak about it, how to talk to the person about it, how to talk to each other about it, how to open up to our friends about it if we choose to do so, how to be, sensitive to other people about, their presentation, their identities. It's such a challenge. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with, having challenges and having, things be a little bit difficult. I think really the best way is really to have, I'm big on having conversations about having conversations. It's like, well, if I notice maybe now is maybe too early to be like asking somebody all this stuff when we literally are meeting up for a drink for the first time ever. And then, I'm not trying to get all into your like sexual history and like all your business about, oh, what do you consider sex and all this kind of, it's kind of like, maybe wait a little on some conversations, and some people are way more open with certain topics and conversations anyway. So if they are and you are, that's going to be different too. Like the social dynamics can be different depending on who you're with, and everybody's individually different. So I mean, I feel like, I don't know if I'm explaining things more or making it more confusing, but I mean, just, I think the communication piece, and then if people know your intentions are never to be like hurtful. Your intentions when you're asking questions are always just so that you know how to communicate better, so that you're not making someone feel weird or uncomfortable, or you're not saying the wrong thing, because you can't really guess every single detail, or you're not doing the wrong thing or touching the wrong way or acting the wrong way. That's going to get in the way of, if you're really interested in this person, get in the way of that comfort level being together. You don't want to be having all these arguments about stuff, or all this like discomfort, or noticing that they're like maybe not answering you anymore, or they don't seem to want to go out anymore, or like they seem to be kind of like upset about something that may have gone wrong or happened. You want to be able to have conversations about it without a debate, without an argument, without putting somebody on the defensive, without getting on the defensive. It can be a really sensitive topic, and a hard thing to kind of bring up. People might already be so, used to people coming at them in so many weird ways that like automatically, if you bring it up, it might be just challenging for them to kind of mention anything about it. Like I get that way, like depending on who I'm talking to. I'll be like here comes this person, they're gonna ask me all these inappropriate questions. I get that way a lot. I've even had friends that I've been like, I don't even want to like go to a gay bar with them. Like certain straight cis female friends, I was like, I don't even want to go to a gay bar with them because they start acting all weird, or I don't want to go to a gay bar with them because they start feeling like that's room for them to ask me all kinds of like inappropriate questions about, sexual things I may or may not have done, and like how to do different stuff. I mean, I remember one of my friends, we were at like a gay club, and she was like asking me like, oh, is scissoring a thing? And I'm just like, okay, like why are we having this conversation? Like, why all of a sudden do we need to like be talking about if I've been scissoring people? Like, I don't understand like how that even like came up, because I would never just be bringing that up by myself. But it's like, especially like a straight cis female friend, like I know clearly she's not interested and I'm not interested in her, so why would she be asking me, that kind of question? Like, I understand, like, yeah, you're trying to like get educated or like learn and you're curious, but it's like it gets awkward too when it's like, okay, like, why are you being so curious like this, or somebody asking you, if you're, top or a bottom, or, people asking you about, what is this type of gender's genitalia like, or all, it's just like all this kind of stuff is just like, it's really none of their business. And I never feel pressure to really answer. I'm just, I kind of like throwing questions back at people if it starts getting really inappropriate. And I'm kind of like, well, what do you think it would be like? Or what do you think? What do you think? Like, I know you're asking me, but let's hear what you have to think about this, what you've thought through on it. And, before you're coming to me, asking me questions, because it's different when it's like they really want to know, or like maybe if it's a friend who might not have had certain experiences, or they're having some kind of feelings that they're questioning and they don't really understand, and then they might ask like, hey, have you ever like had this kind of experience before, or like, had these kind of emotions before, or feelings for this type of person, or like, how do you address this? That's different than like somebody asking you like your most recent sexual position with what kind of person. It's kind of like, wait, like, why would I even need to be like explaining this to somebody? But especially if I'm not gonna like be with them in that way, I don't really see why it would be their business. But it comes up, guys. So, I'm not saying you have to be patient with it, but, if you never give people any chances, and every time they mention something inappropriate or disrespectful, because it does happen, and it's totally your choice, you don't have to keep talking to them. But if I do notice, if I were to no longer be friends with somebody ever after the first time they asked me something inappropriate, I think most of my straight friends I would not have. My straight cis friends I would probably not, because a lot of them do get very inappropriate. I do have quite a few kind of like straight, cis male friends that I find it kind of interesting. We talk about females a lot. I do find it kind of interesting to talk to them about dating. I have a lot of attractive friends, cis male straight friends. I've got a lot of attractive ones, who I like being around. We like hanging out. We mostly, drink, play some sports, watch some sports, whatever. But it's a chill hang usually. We can usually chat, hang out, have a fun kind of interaction together. It can be pretty fun. And I don't know, most of those friends for me tend to be pretty respectful. I've on my own personal experiences, I've had the most trouble with straight cis females. They're usually the ones that for me get a little bit like, all right, y'all are out of control sometimes, it's like, dude, calm down. Like, I don't know, like, they'll be just confused sometimes. Like, I get confused. I'm like, wait, I thought you said you were straight, and now we're walking down the street and you're holding my hand, and then like leaning on my shoulder and like kissing me, and it's like, but you're straight. So it's like, I don't know if they feel like they can do that because they're females and I won't mind, or what they're thinking. I mean, I've never really picked their brain about it. I'm just kind of like, all right. And then I remember one of my friends got offended because I was accidentally texted the wrong person. Accidentally texted her instead of one of my friends. And I was telling my friend, this guy friend of mine, I was texting him about her, but I was like, I don't really know if she's into me. because I think she's into somebody else. But I texted him that, and I thought I was texting him and accidentally texted it to her. And then she got the message, and I think it made things really awkward. But I did blame it on the alcohol that night. I was like, "Is the alcohol?" And it was mostly the alcohol. But also, I was not too certain about what was going on because of the situations behaviorally that had been going on that whole entire night, about her having all these, like, trying to have all these deep sexual questions that she seemed interested in asking me. And I was just like, well, if you're not interested in me, like, why the hell would you be asking me all these things? And so I think sometimes it's just kind of weird, because I'm like, okay, like, people say they're not interested, but then they want to act like they're interested. They want the attention. They like the attention. They like that, oh, there's somebody that's like a female or somebody that's kind of more masculine, kind of interested in them. There's a lot of reasons why I think people do that kind of thing. And I think it's up to you if you like it or not. I mean, sometimes I can entertain it, and then other times I'm just like, dude, like, you're getting on my nerves. But I don't know, females get like that, and I try not to really, I try not to make it weird. They make it weird. I never flirt really with straight women. I just leave them alone. I'm just like, you go and do what you gotta do. Like, the most I'll do is I'll invite them to, like, the gay club or to something for Pride or something. I don't really do much more than that, honestly. But yeah, so I think that's mostly all I really have to say about, when it comes to sexuality, dating, different gender dynamics with dating. That's mostly all that I can say has really come up for me. You might get discrimination on some dating apps too, or some fetishizing people. I've been on a bi dating app before that I noticed was a lot of people that were married male-female couples. So that to me was a little unexpected, I guess I would say, on my end, because it's like, I think the reason why it was unexpected is because I was, the filters I had chosen were like females. So I chose a filter that was like, females on a bi app, and then ended up getting a bunch of married females that had husbands, and they wanted a third, and so it was kind of like not really what I was looking for. I'm not against poly relationships or triple relationships or any kind of consensual things that people decide that they're gonna do, but at that time I wasn't really looking for married couples. I was like, how come all these women have husbands? Like, that to me wasn't really what I was looking for. Again, another thing, there's a lot of, straight cis males that have like a lesbian, female fetish. So maybe they want to see their woman hooking up with another woman, and that turns them on. But it's like, it's cool and all, but it's like, I don't want to base my relationship on your husband's fetish. It's like, it's different. And for me, it's like, I don't even know how to get into these conversations. Like, do I keep talking to them and just see where it goes? Like, I'm not like, I don't know. Like, it's just a lot. It's a lot, guys. It is a lot. And a lot of the dating apps are getting better with having different categories that you can choose from to best describe what you are, who you are, how you identify, who you're interested in. They really have changed to that extent, which is really good, but it's still challenging. I can't even describe. I don't think I've even hit all the challenging dynamics, but it's freaking challenging. But yeah, I hope you guys have some good luck out there. I know a lot of people, I joke and say that Pride season is dating and mating season. I mean, it kind of almost becomes that way for a lot of people, because it's a time when there's a lot of gay related festivities locally where you can actually meet other people openly, and everybody just wants to celebrate and meet people and have a good time with some fun people. So I mean, who doesn't want to do that with someone that they might potentially have a love interest with, or who might find someone that's interested in them? Whereas, in the rest of our lives, most of us are stuck in this, cis straight culture. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, a lot of us are stuck like just in this that's the mainstream, and we're kind of in there and we're the minority. Versus when you're at like a pride festival or something, it's like, yeah, there's so many different dynamics and so much diversity there, but we're no longer the minority. There's a lot of different types of dynamics going on there. So I don't know, y'all do what you gotta do, have some fun, keep it safe. Definitely keep it safe. I should say it again, keep it safe. Keep it safe, guys. And I'm gonna bring up some more topics, and hopefully this is helpful information for people out there who might not know anything. I'd say this is kind of like places to start. I have some other topics that I think I've posted about, like gender and dating and different things like that. That talks a bit about like communication areas and ways to communicate about things that, again, a lot of us are never taught. Like it's hard for a lot of us. Most of us have straight parents. Most of us do. Not all of us, but most of us do. And so those parents might never even think about this stuff. So even if they are the type of parent that's willing and able to educate you on sexuality and gender and things like that, a lot of times they might never even bring up these other topics. And a lot of times you might not want to talk about it with your parents, in all honesty. And you might have nobody to really go ask. Like, who are you going to ask? Your pastor? Or who? Like, your teacher? Like, I don't even know who people ask questions to these days. Like, I know when I was growing up, that was not a thing. Like, you don't ask your pastor about your gender identity unless you want to be told that you're going to go to hell or whatever. Like, you kind of already know where certain people are going to go with stuff. If your parents, if you are out to your parents, like, and they kind of told you kind of what they believe and think about things, you already know where they stand on stuff. So sometimes, a lot of times, we're not really able to come to them and ask them questions because they don't really have the answers, and they're more curious asking us questions. And so it's just, the learning aspect is, kind of hard, because especially when you're different, you notice you're different, and you're just like, well, what do I do? I was always wondering that when I was like in a sex ed class, and I'm just like sitting there looking at these pictures of the insides of people's, biological bodies. I'm just looking at this like, I don't find any of this attractive. Like, this is nothing that I've never thought about, like, the internal organs of some individual. Like, a lot of us, when we started our biology or health classes, like, the first chapter, you take the book home and you're just like, I want to flip to the sex chapter. And I was like, this is all we get to know is, like, the labels of, like, internal organs, and then, like, a couple paragraphs about how to get pregnant, and then I don't even think our textbooks had anything about protecting against STDs back then. It was just like a book with, like, it was so scientific, and you're just like, that's probably the only thing that I learned in biology class was about the human reproductive organs. And I was just like, I mean, I'm not saying reproduction isn't important, because it is. I mean, that's how we all got here. But I mean, it frustrates me to no end that there's just not a lot out there for people to learn from. And then, people wonder why we have messed up relationships. It's like we can't really figure it out easily because we're never socialized into a way of how to appropriately address your partner or your crush or your girlfriend, boyfriend, person you're dating, whoever they may be, whatever that relationship dynamic becomes. Like, a lot of times we're not taught like what to do, how to do it, how to approach it, who do we talk to, like, a lot of times we just don't know. Like, there's no answer. And yeah, I haven't been in school for like ages, but when I was, I'm pretty sure that the religious school I went to is probably still using those same books. I remember we had like a class about AIDS and HIV. There was a teacher who was from a higher up grade. I think we started learning in 5th and 6th grade. And there was a teacher in like 4th, I think he was in like the 9th grade teacher or something. He came in, like the high school teacher, and taught us about these things. And he was pretty strict. I remember the lady who taught us sex ed was this virgin, really giggly, kind of embarrassed person, that she was more embarrassed than the students. And I remember, I don't know, man, it was just such a weird experience. I'm just like, why? I don't know. Part of me just wonders why they even taught it in the first place. It's like, why are you even going to teach this if you're not really going to teach it? I think they just tried to teach it to their comfort level, which I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, now we know how to get pregnant and how to not get AIDS. But other than that, it's like we didn't really learn any other thing. We didn't learn like good social skills, like, how to have healthy relationships and good boundaries, how to talk about different things. Like, they just assume don't have sex and stay abstinent. Not everybody's going to do that. So for the people who aren't going to do that, what do they do? Or for the people who are going to date, what do they do? We weren't even taught about dating or like sexual interests of any kind. It was almost like it didn't even exist. It was just like, oh, well, your body's going to change so that you can get pregnant. And then you're going to probably get pregnant once you get married. And then once you get married, when you're pregnant, these are all the body parts that are involved in all that. And this is how long it's going to take for the baby to come out. And these are the stages of the fetus development. And then it comes out like this, and then you'll figure it out. You'll figure out all the rest on your own, pretty much, is pretty much what they were telling us. And it was like, wow. And even as far as like puberty and things like that, man, like, it's just like things that that I don't even know, like, if they never thought about it or if they just didn't want people to think outside of what they were teaching because it was religious or what. But I'm like, man, it was like the most unrelatable experience of my life for like weeks of it, however long we were spending learning that topic. I was like, man, this is like so unrelatable. Like, nothing that they're explaining here is something that I've experienced, really. They talk about like females getting periods and, breast development and things like that. Yeah, of course. But they don't talk about dysphoria. They don't talk about, at least our books didn't. They didn't talk about like, hey, what to do if you don't. If you're, I've talked about it before. Like, I was pretty uncomfortable with, okay, I don't want breasts developing. And if they are, I don't want to wear a bra. And I don't want to have a period. And I just want to run around with my guy friends and play basketball all the time. Like, how does all this factor into that's what I want to do and this is what's happening to me? Like, nobody was there to be like, yeah, well, there's not really a way that you can, like, not have that happen. But, naturally not have it happen unless your body just decides it's not going to develop that way. But, I experienced a lot of things that I was just like, whoa, like, I'm not all about this, like, pure womanhood thing. Like, I was not about it. I was like, I do not like this. I do not want it. I don't, and then, like, I think people didn't really see that too much, but it was just things as simple as, like, if you're on your period and you have, like, pads or tampons or something, but you don't want to carry a purse. I mean, not everybody's into purses. Like, that was like a big thing for me. I was just like, dude, I hate purses. Like, I mean, now people have like the fanny packs, and it's kind of more fashionable to kind of have the fanny pack like around your shoulder, over your shoulder, things like that. Or like, I know people who, like kind of more stud females put like tampons in their socks and things if they're wearing jeans. It's not too revealing. If your, cuffs are kind of covering your socks and things, like, there's different little methods, where you don't really have to rely on pockets, or maybe you have cargo pockets, or, things like that, where it's just like, really, like, I don't want to have to explain all this to people, like, that's kind of how I was when I was younger. I was like, I don't want to have to, like, deal with all this stuff and, like, explain it. Because there was no method for me, it was like everybody was telling me I have to do all this stuff that I clearly didn't want to do. They were like, you have to go buy purses, you have to go buy bras that look like this, you have to go buy these things that look like this because you're a woman now. And it's like, wait, like, what the hell? Like, that's not what I'm trying to do. But I mean, there was really no other explanation, and I was just, in my mind, I was always just like, oh, one of these days, like, maybe when I'm in high school, I'll adjust, and I'll be like fully into like all this girly female stuff. And I was like, maybe I'm not fully there yet. Maybe in college I'll be more comfortable with it. It's like, guys, I'm way past college, past grad school, and I'm still not comfortable with it. All right. So some of us, we're just never going to be comfortable with it. And Lord knows I tried, and I'm glad that I never actually conformed, because I like the way I am. I love the way I am. But I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying there hasn't been any struggles, because there definitely have been struggles. Definitely a lot of misunderstanding on the ends of family and people that I grew up around who were training me and teaching me. So definitely a lot of pressure to be a certain way, to act a certain way. You want to just do what's safe for you, of course. You don't want to put yourself in harm's way, but you also don't want to be, completely like not able to function in your own authentic self. So trying to find that balance, I know when you're younger, is super hard, because you might not have all that much flexibility. You might not have money or income. You might be at risk of losing your housing, or losing, a place to stay if family kicks you out, or if they start being like really abusive or judgmental or hit you or something like that. You might not have, a comfortable space to live in. So being younger actually is super, super hard. When you don't have understanding people around you. But, when you get older, it can get better. You can get money. I mean, honestly, you can get money and you can move. You can get a job where you can find the funds that you need and move to a city where people kind of get you. You can move to LA. You can move to San Diego, San Francisco, New York. You can freaking move. Get the heck out of wherever you're at if it's really that miserable of a town, and you can, live your own authentic life. I mean, it's unfortunate that for a lot of people it has to happen when they're older and they've moved, and then they can come into themselves. But that's unfortunate, but it is the truth. People do get bullied and killed or kill themselves. That these types of things are for real, and they happen every day. And it's unfortunate that those things have to happen, all because there are people around that aren't understanding enough that a lot of us have differences, and we're just taught that, hey, you have to conform. Nobody ever teaches the majority culture that no, they need to learn also. It's not just, okay, conform to be like someone who's quote unquote normal. That's not really what it is. It's everybody needs to learn, right? We all need to learn about ourselves, about different types of people, and kind of where we fit. That's why I like to discuss these types of topics, is because there isn't a lot of information on these types of topics, but there are a lot of people that can relate to these types of topics. So it's just interesting to me that it's like, we do have voices out there. We do have representation out there. We do have some kind of power in society. You see it all over the place, but it's, a lot of us feel like we have to keep hidden. And yeah, so I'm gonna get some more topics going, and thanks for listening, guys.